Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Soldiers of Cinema podcast. I'm Clark Coffey, and with me, as always, is my trusted, reliable, amazing co-host, Cullen McFader. What's up, Cullen?
I'm good. I'm even better now after the nice adjectives.
That's my goal, man. I mean, when I go back and not that I go back and listen to our old episodes, but obviously when I'm editing, right? And there's, we've got a few episodes in the can, just for all of our listeners there, a little inside baseball. But we've got a few episodes in the can, and so we'll record them, and then it might be a while before I go back and edit them, right? And it's always interesting to listen to, like, how we introduce each other, right? So I just had this thought. I was like, I just want to overwhelm Cullen with some nice warm fuzzies in our introduction. And, for everybody else out there, try that. Like, pick somebody today and just compliment them, Just make sure you're sincere. And I am sincere. But in all seriousness, it's great to be back with you, and in this episode we are going to be discussing Die Hard right in time for Christmas, because yes, it is a Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Do you agree?
I
sound
agree.
Psyched.
Yeah.
Are you sad for Christmas? Or are you sad?
No,
for Die
there's
Hard,
many controversies about the conversation about it, but I agree.
Okay. So you can't just open your heart up to it like an uninhibited celebration of the fact that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, because I can tell that you're torn. Okay, we're going to get to that.
It's even a political issue here.
It's
the Prime Minister has actually declared it a Christmas issue, so who knows?
Okay, a Christmas
it's
issue?
dividing people up now.
Okay, well, we're going to get to that. But before we do, and this is going to be like a little bit different maybe. I mean, I don't know. We always talk about a bunch of random stuff kind of in the beginning, but usually we jump into the movie that we're discussing pretty quickly. But one of the things that I want to chat with you about in this episode is writing. Mm-hmm. I think like periodically we kind of insert some discussion on like our experiences as filmmakers. I mean, we've had a couple episodes where you've talked very specific. I mean, the entire episode was kind of specifically discussing your creative process in one of the features that you've made. So periodically we do this, but the reason that I want to talk about this, because I've had a super interesting experience in a writing class recently, and I'd really be interested to hear your thoughts on this and your experiences on this. Maybe for all of us, I don't know. Maybe there's some people out there just seem to be like great at like every aspect of the filmmaking process, but my hunch is that the vast majority of us, there's at least like one area that it's like almost overwhelmingly challenging or something. And for me, that's writing. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's so wacky is that like, that's the thing that I absolutely need to do, right? It's like, in other words, I'm totally compelled to do it. I feel like I can't sidestep it. Like I must do this, mm-hmm. but it's the thing that I am most scared of. So it's like the thing I most need to do, and I am most terrified and scared of it, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that takes total sense. Yeah,
total sense. Yeah, and I'm sure there's and for other people it could be other thing, but that's my personal experience. So, like having right, and it's like I'll sit down to write, and maybe I'll have like a couple months of like pretty good progress, but then I inevitably get like stuck somewhere along the line, and it's like stuck to the point where it's like I just don't complete it. I mean, I literally have thousands of pages of writing mm-hmm. on my little computer here. If I were to print them out, be thousands of pages. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's not one script in there out of all of that I'm like, I love this. I want to go make this into a movie. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing holding me back from making a movie, except for the fact that I don't have a script that I want to make into a movie, right? So this has been like big struggle. So I decided, I was like, UCLA has an extension course, and UCLA has a pretty darn good reputation for their film writing classes mm-hmm. and for their film department programs. And so they've got an extension program where they have like a series of feature film writing classes. And I thought, what the heck, man, I'm just going to take one of these. I'll take the first one in the series. and see if I can just pick up, because it's like, I mean, I'm sure you have too, right? There's just a million books out there. There's just a ton of content, right? I mean, there's
Yeah,
a
it can be hard to kind of
gazillion.
like synthesize it into
It's
something useful.
it's overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
overwhelming, right? There's, Save the Cat, blah, blah, blah. I mean, all these books, and there's a million YouTube channels and a million. I mean, yeah, my head wants to explode just sitting here, even talking about it. So I thought, well, maybe if I just take a class, where it's like, yes, it's online, but it's like in real time. We all show up. It's like 12 students. We're on Zoom. And, it's like every week, like 3 hours a week. It'll help me kind of focus, right? And there'll actually be like an experienced human being, there teaching that can ask questions, in real time too.
It'll keep you to a schedule and stuff like that too.
Keeps you
so
to a
it's helpful.
schedule.
Yeah.
And it'll hold me accountable, right? Because there's actually a grade. You have assignments, every week there's a writing assignment you have to turn in. And, so it's like, okay, let's do this. And so I sign up for the class and I start taking it. And right off the bat, man, I'm loving it, dude. Like, the teacher is great. And I'm like kind of hesitant to get into super details because it's like, I don't know if this person wants to be discussed, in public, but so I'll respect their privacy, right? But suffice it to say, it's like this. I thought the teacher is really good. This is like an actual, writer who's written, major studio feature films have, been produced. His scripts have been turned into major studio feature films. He's here in LA. He's in the industry, and he's got experience, and that was intriguing to me. But right off the bat, there's these fun exercises, right? I'll give you a couple examples of some of the writing exercises we did. So one of the writing exercises was just to describe a landscape, and but you're gonna do it like 3 times, and you're doing it from the perspective of a different emotional mindset, right? So maybe the first one was something to the effect of, describe a landscape from the perspective of like a person who's just lost their child in a war, okay? And then the second one was like, describe that exact same landscape, but from the point of view of, someone who just, fell in love, right? And then I think the third one was something like describe a landscape from the perspective of like an animal or something even. And totally loved it. Like jumped right in, no hesitation, no procrastination, no fear, jumped right in, had a blast. And I was happy with my work. Another exercise was eavesdrop on some people talking without them knowing, and get like 3-4 pages of quote unquote dialogue from this eavesdropping, and come back home with it, and turn that whole conversation, like translate that into each person or character only being able to use 3 words at a time to like express their thoughts.
Okay, yeah.
It's just like an interesting exercise, right? And then after you do that, okay, now go back to that original eavesdropped, what you've transcribed, right? The original eavesdropped conversation, and now write it in the voice of David Mamet.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
And that was super fun. I loved it. Like I lost myself in this exercise. I had a total blast with this exercise. Like I wasn't scared. I didn't procrastinate. I wasn't worried. I had a blast, and I was really satisfied with my writing. The whole process, and the outcome, I was totally happy and satisfied with. So we're doing all these exercises like this, right? And then we get kind of further into the class, and now we're getting to the nitty gritty. And they're like, okay, we get to this to the point where we have an outline for the script that we're kind of working on, right? So the idea is that through the series of classes, you end up the result is that you have a full-length feature script at the end of all this, okay?
Yeah.
So you're almost kind of like workshopping a script. Since this is the first class, they kind of start off with a few exercises to warm you up, kind of thing. So we get to the part where we have an outline. We're supposed to have an outline. And in the class, the teacher presents like an example outline. And I think it maybe was taken from like Pixar or something. Some, it's like very much like if the this happens then this happens, it's like the whole, I mean, it's like as structured as you can imagine it, right? Obviously it's 3 act, but it's like here's your inciting incident, and then this happens, and then this happens, and here's your midpoint, and then here's your da 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 da, right, all the way through. And I totally tense up, I totally freeze, I'm totally uncomfortable, and I start to try to like take these ideas that I have for my script, because I do by this point I have a lot of ideas about characters and themes, and I have scenes in my head, and I've got a lot of pieces here, and I completely freeze up. And what I realize, this is what happens to me all the time. And I've read, all these books that everybody says you're supposed to read, right? It's all of these like structure books, right? You probably have too, right? I'm sure you have. Have you?
Oh yeah. I've gone.
You've been down this path yourself. Yeah. Yep. And every time I get to this point, it doesn't work for me. And I start thinking, like, what's wrong with me? Maybe I'm just not a writer.
Yeah,
Maybe
like
I'm just not.
imposter syndrome sets in. Yeah.
I'm just not. Well, it's not even. I'm not even posing, man. It's just like straight up. Like I must not be good at this. I just must not be a good writer. So it's weird, is that everything else I'm writing, I love the process, and I'm happy with what I'm producing. I get to this point, and I freeze up, I tense up, I'm uncomfortable. It's not fun. That's a big thing. It becomes not fun. And it's not like, oh, I can't figure out what happens in Act 3 for the client, and that's why. No. I mean, it's like this visceral, almost physical, negative repulsion from taking my ideas and forcing them into this very linear style of processing. And I think I might have finally kind of got some clarity on this for myself. Now, maybe there are other people. Here's why I want to bring all this up, is because maybe there are some other people out there listening who has had similar situations, and maybe, Cullen, you have. I don't know. I know I'm doing all the talking here, and sorry, I apologize for that, everybody. But I want to get the story out in detail. And then I want to hear about, like, if this resonates with you, and if so, kind of how, Cullen. So I start, because this has been kind of an issue just in general, right? It's like my process, I can't seem to fit what feels intuitively right for me from a process perspective into what everybody seems to keep telling me is the way that you should be doing this. Well, since everybody seems to be telling me that this is the way that you should be doing this, I just assume something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And that basically it's like, well, I'm just not good at this. I just don't know what I'm doing. And so through kind of some strange combination of events, this kind of like sort of coincidental. So I had this experience in class, and it's really causing me to think about this again, right? It's like I'm really kind of, what's going on here? Why am I having this response? Gee, what does this mean? And something, I don't even remember exactly how, but I was having a conversation with somebody else entirely outside of this, and we're talking about personality types, okay? And for if you're kind of, for people who may or may not be familiar, there's a personality typing test called the Myers-Briggs that's been around for a long time, and it kind of it's a very popular test. It's been around a long time, and I think it has value to it. Now, of course, there's no test that can kind of like, it's not that this is the alpha omega of, but it's just a little lens through which you can kind of see yourself maybe, and maybe illuminate some aspect of yourself. And in this case, of a creative process, and maybe some challenges you're having. So I was talking about this personality stuff, and I went back, and I remember having like taken this when I was like, one of my employers a long time ago had me take it, like the official Myers-Briggs, like it wasn't online. It was like this official thing. It was like their HR department was doing it. And I got my results back. So I went, and I remembered what those results were. So I went back, and I was like, I wonder if this like says anything about what's going on here. And you and I talked about this briefly before, because I wanted to know your personality type. So when I get this back, so so the way it breaks down is there's like 4 kind of traits that they kind of break down, that you could kind of fall into these different things. And I'll just kind of go through it real quick. So the first category is that, are you an extrovert or an introvert? And and I popped up as an introvert. I think, Colin, you did too, right? When you told
Yes.
me that
Yeah.
you popped up as an introvert. Then the second category is, are you a sensor? Which means, are you somebody that kind of uses your eyes, your ears, your kind of uses your senses to kind of perceive the world, and you focus on kind of the facts and the details of what's actually really around you in the world. And then the flip side of that is that you could be intuitive, which is what you and I are. And that means that you kind of focus on like what could be maybe as opposed to what is, where you focus on the big picture and patterns instead of
See the forest through the trees.
yeah. So it's all, yeah, exactly. So it's almost like sensors maybe focus on the trees and the intuitives kind of focus on the forest. That's a really good way to put it, dude. Yeah. And then the next category is, are you a thinker or a feeler? And you and I fall into the feeling.
Yeah.
And the thinkers are people who are like logical and, analytical, kind of objectively weigh pros and cons, this kind of thing. And feelers kind of tend to be, which like the name implies, like kind of sensitive and kind of base decisions on kind of your personal values and kind of how you feel it'll affect you or other people around you. And then the final, and this is where you and I are different, is that there are either judgers or perceivers. And you're a super judgmental person. So
Yeah, of course.
Judgers tend to be like, and of course, and everything's on a kind of scale, right? Everything's like on a sliding kind of curve. These aren't like binary in the way that they seem. But judgers are people that tend to be kind of more organized and prepared, stick to plans, and perceivers are people that generally are a little more open. They like to keep their options open. Rather, doesn't mean that they're necessarily more open, but you like to keep your options open and maybe a little more spontaneous and a little bit more flexible. So I'm an INFP and you're an INFJ. Well, and I started kind of just using that as a lens through which to try to understand what's going on here. And I mean, basically, long story short, I feel like, the other interesting thing is this is key. So apparently they keep track of everybody who takes these tests, right? And apparently the percentage of people in the population, I guess they kind of, extrapolate to the population at large from their sample sizes, but roughly-ish, INFPs make up about 4% of the population, about 4% of the population. And INFJs, which you are, I think, are even less. If I'm not mistaken, you might even be like 1.5 to 2%.
Yeah, I think it says it's at least on this thing that I took, it was like the rarest personality type.
So the point is that the way you and I are likely to perceive or kind of interpret the world could be pretty different than the kind, the majority of what's out there. And again, it's not better, it's not worse, it's not all of these personality types have places and strengths and weaknesses and everything else. So it's not about, it's rare, so that means, no, it's just, there's no value statement on any of it. It's a tool to kind of understand your own self. But I kind of, and so I started delving into that world. And I think like maybe for the first time in my life, this has been a long story to kind of get down to a pretty simple kind of thing here, which I think maybe a lot of people figure out for themselves a lot sooner than maybe I am, is that it's just none of this process that is generally discussed and taught and all these books and everything else that just don't work. They just don't work for this personality type. And have you found that for yourself too? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only with just these books, but even like school and things. Like I've always found it really, like, doing school and university and things like that. Like, of course, I was in university, I left. And I always was wondering sort of why, because I was always very interested in learning, and I like
super curious,
learning new things and things like that, but could never really get my mind on that, like the way that you learn in like a institutional setting kind of thing.
Right.
But even with like creative work, very similarly to kind of what you've been describing, where it's like you can write a script in this, laid out kind of structured way that is, or even just brainstorming. Like there's structures to brainstorming and how people teach how to come up with ideas and things like that. And I find like that stuff has just never resonated with me, and it's really always just been kind of up to my feeling of like I can get a lot of work done in a single night because I'm really, really, passionate about something, or I have like this spark of creativity, and then not work on something for months afterwards. And even just in terms of like the actual content of that writing, I vary so much from wanting to do something sort of formalistic and narrative driven to something experimental, and like it goes way back and forth. So it's always been really, really impossible for me to, and I don't even mean that lightly, like very, very, very difficult for me to even think about in terms of like a career. Like I've never really wanted to be a screenwriter as a career, or primarily a writer. Like I've wanted to write my own things, but never write for other people and sell.
That's where I'm at too. Yeah, me too.
And I think one of those one of the main reasons that I was never, despite the fact that I do somewhat enjoy writing and I actually enjoy getting my ideas down and fleshing those things out, is just because I've never been able to fit into that sort of, like if I were to do this as a job, I don't think I'd be able to do it. Writing specifically, of course, filmmaking is how I tend to make a living, but writing specifically can be one of those things that, because it's, especially with screenwriting, is so technical, that I've always found it. Yeah, it's difficult to like, fall into those, for lack of a better term, like workplace kind of systems.
To fall in line with the way the rest of the world is. Well, I mean, it's interesting to me that, just to remind viewers out there, that you and I met because we were taking a class on Werner Herzog.
Yes, yeah.
And I have a hunch, I mean, at least for me, I won't speak for you, but, I think one of the things that really speak to me about his films is that they kind of click into my brain. Like I see that non-linearness in his films, and this intuitiveness with which he's making his films, and with which he's writing them and shooting them. And they seem just so very intuitive to me. Yeah. And they seem kind of the antithesis of this formulaic way of creating.
And that's the same thing with I would say, like even Terrence Malick, who I would probably say is my favorite director, if not like the one that's inspired me the most, is very similar in that sense of like where it seems very intuitive. And I've heard people say that it's painful to work with him because of how intuitive he is, but I'm always like, that sounds like a dream scenario to work in that way.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, it's so interesting because it's like, I think there's this conception where it's like, oh, you're talking about a creative process. So when you're talking about a creative process, I mean, just the word creative, I imagine like, oh, well, there must be like all this room then to just do like what you feel, right? That's like my interpretation. But in the reality, like you and I both know, it's like, that's not the way the vast majority of the world is processing this. Like, even though it's a creative endeavor, it's like in this class, it's like everybody here is smart and like really smart and creative still, like, and talented and all these things. But it's like I can so tell the difference in kind of where my brain is at with most other people, because it's just like, it's like this very linear, like A to B to C. Like, even though it's a creative process, it's like it feels at least like, when you read these books, like Save the Cat or Story, all these, whatever. And it's all like very analytical, right? Even though they're describing a creative process, it's also analytical. And it's like, what I've realized is like, I just can't function that way.
Yeah,
that's just actually, not.
One other thing too, I'll add is in terms of like the end result too. I find that I very frequently, whether it's a short or a feature, or even just a script that I finished, that I really like to leave things up to interpretation. Yeah, I really like to present an idea and not present a answer to it, or just ask a question and let that kind of sit. And I find that like a lot of the notes, not all of them, but a lot of the feedback that I've gotten on my work that has been sort of critical of it has been like I can't figure out what it's saying, or like it's not telling me anything. It's not like giving me answers. It seems to be unsure of where it wants. And it's like, no, that's not like
that's the
what
point
I'm trying to do. It's the point is exactly.
That's
the point is to ask these questions. And so I do, and like even when I remember when we were doing Last Temptation of Christ, and one of the things that I found really interesting in the commentary to that was Scorsese talking about how he wanted to have a conversation with an audience and present them with questions rather than answers, so that people would continue that conversation as they left the theater. And that really clicked for me as well, where I was like, that puts it into words for me, that kind of this desire.
Yeah, and I guess that's and we're already 26 minutes in here, and hopefully I hope this has been like helpful or interesting to our audience. As people in their own finding their way through their own creative processes and everything.
Hmm.
But for me, so much of my hope, at least, like I'm writing to explore is the goal.
Hmm.
And it sounds like that's what you're, it's like I'm writing to explore, not to like to ask, not to answer. And specifically when I sit down to write a story, I mean, I'm having fun when I don't know how it's going to end. So the idea of like outlining a script and having this preconceived notion of like exactly how this is going to wrap up
Hmm.
and exactly how these story arcs are going to go and this kind of thing is to me, now again, it's like this is not, I'm not suggesting that is not just as valid a way to create. Again, it's about just matching process with
Oh,
your
exactly.
temperament and
Yeah.
personality. So I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that's clear. So this is not me knocking another way of working that might work great for you guys out there. This is my own personal journey. But it's like I want to write to the point where my brain just kind of shuts off, or it
Hmm.
feels like my analytical self is shutting off, and it's just the characters are kind of taking over,
Yes. Yeah.
and I'm surprised by what's happening.
Hmm.
And so the story may go in a way that may very much just kind of be the logic of it might be very dreamlike. It may not be, like it might not be linear or rational
Hmm.
in like that really truest sense. And it's so weird to say this, but it's like, and I'm so old to just kind of be finally kind of getting to a place where I'm confident and comfortable
Hmm.
about my own process. And it's like, it's okay if that's what you do.
Oh yeah.
And
I
I,
mean, I always felt like kind of like I was doing the wrong thing because I always hear even like from famous screenwriters, famous directors to friends of mine who also work in film or write or things like that, where it's like this. One of the things that always got to me was the I'm going to put every scene on a cue card and lay them out on my floor. And I was like, I could not, like, I could
mm,
never relate to that. I was
I
like,
can't
always
either.
like, and I've tried it because I would just be
Me
like,
too.
oh, clearly that's how you do
You
it.
and I have tried it together. You
Yeah.
and I have
Oh,
tried it
yes.
together.
Yes. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
the thing. And it's so weird how, like, for many of us, obviously not everyone, but for many of us, it's like, it's really, when the whole world seems to be saying this other way is the way to do it.
Hmm.
It's very, and from the earliest age, right? That's kind of most of, or all of what you've heard. I guess that's why it can be so challenging to finally come to a place where you're like, hey, like my way of doing it is okay too.
Hmm.
And sometimes that can just be really challenging to embrace. But I
Hmm.
feel like this class, in a very roundabout way, as I described, I think was so instrumental in helping me finally realize that. And the other thing I want to segue to a little bit before we get on to Die Hard, and we will, I promise, we'll get on to Die Hard, is I'm curious for you, like for me, my like the very tangible kind of like my physical space, my keyboard, my state of mind, like those things are so important
Hmm. Hmm.
in kind of allowing that process to happen, because it's such like an intuitive and kind of feeling process for me that all of these little things really matter. I'm curious, like for you, if that's the case, like even like my keyboard, like I've got
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
like this
Yeah.
super special keyboard that's like for on a tactile sense feels good, or if like I'm too tired, or if I'm like overly wired, or if there's other things like in my space that's like I can be very easily distracted, for
Hmm.
example.
Hmm.
Like I'm just curious, because obviously now we're kind of moving from maybe like a more kind of like philosophical space to kind of a more just logistical space, but I think they can be so connected. I
Hmm.
mean, for you, what are some of these like some tricks of the trade that you've kind of learned to help your writing experience along?
I think like removing distractions is such a basic
Huge,
statement,
yeah,
but I think
so
that like
huge.
even doing something like disconnecting from the internet and like,
Yeah,
or like I remember one of the most
focus mode.
creatively fulfilling weeks of my life was when I was on an island in Thailand that had no internet connection, no electricity, no running water. Like it was, and
No running water.
suddenly you had to flush the toilet with a bucket. But
Okay,
suddenly the
I've been there.
entire like I was shooting a movie at the time, and like the entire, for lack of a better term, thesis of the film like came to me while I was in this space, because there was just like my brain was just so stimulated by just being in like a place that I had no connection to the outside world, and even more specific than that, just again, no distraction to be looking at the news every day, or to just be like watching, mindless stuff online or whatever. And it, yeah.
Do you have, so that's interesting. For me, I feel like I prefer kind of like my safe space.
Right.
I feel like when I'm in a new space, it's harder. And maybe I could like try that more. But like when I'm traveling, I tend to kind of want to like be present in this new place that I'm in, as opposed to kind of hide myself away and write. Now, maybe ideas come, but actually,
I wasn't writing at this point. Well, I barely wrote the movie anyway, but it was more just, like the
inspiration,
the creative inspiration
came
to me so much easier.
Sure.
Without those other distractions, things like that. Like even just walking around in the jungle or like on a beach or something,
right.
It was like very, very...
Totally see that. But when it actually comes to like getting the words out on, I'm like, I have my space, I have my office, it's like, okay, here's my safe space. I don't want anybody around. Yeah. It's like, even if my wife...
Do you write to music, or do you usually...
So sometimes. So sometimes I will. It depends. There will be like kind of long stretches when I just get into it and I'm kind of in a flow and I don't have music. Other times, I'll just, maybe I'll have like a very specific vibe that I'm going for in a scene. And so I'll try to find a piece of music that I feel like kind of gets me emotionally in that vibe. Sometimes I'll just have it on kind of like a rando kind of playlist kind of thing going to try to, because I don't know what kind of vibe I want yet. And so I'm just looking for something that clicks. But sometimes that can lead me a little astray, because I can spend more time kind of going through music than I do writing. So I would say it kind of depends. It kind of depends. And, I think a lot of people have, and again, this goes back to like, well, what do a lot of people say versus what works for you? A lot of people, you'll hear like, hey, you have to sit down, same time, every day, same amount of time, get it in. That doesn't work for me. That does not work for me.
Yeah, not at
all. It's not that I feel like, oh my gosh, I have to be just, struck by lightning to sit down at the computer, but I do have to feel like I have, and again, I feel like this does go to that intuitive kind of feeling way that people like you and I process our environment and our thoughts and feeling. It's like, it's through our feelings, and it's through our intuitive experience of things. It's kind of like how we're processing stuff. And so for me, it can kind of ebb and flow, right? And maybe it's like 9 a.m. one day. Maybe it's like 9 p.m. the next day.
Or
maybe I skip
3:30 in the morning.
Yeah, or maybe I skip a week, and then I'm writing like 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's just, and I feel that feeling is so important. And my hunch is that, it probably is for a lot of people. And I think this is a good time to bring up a really interesting like energy drink that that I've been exposed to recently. So I don't know if I had never heard of this before, but when I checked it out, apparently it's like all over the place. I don't know if you'd ever heard of it, but there's this energy. It's kind of like, it's a shot. It comes in like a 2-ounce shot. It's Magic Mind, and the good people there reached out to us, and they let us try some. And so I've been trying these little 2-ounce shots of this. And I don't even know if energy drink would actually be like the technically like, best way to describe this, because I feel like it's a little bit more than that, but I'm going to get to that. So for me, it's like I wake up and I'm not a super huge morning person, right? I don't know if you are, but I am not a morning person.
Yeah, me either. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I really dislike coffee. Like I have never developed a palate or an appreciation for the taste of coffee. Now I like what it does for me, but I hate the taste of it.
Right. Yeah.
I just never, and I know it's like huge, like people are at Starbucks or wherever all over the place, and people pay a lot of money for this like super fancy coffee making machines and stuff. I mean, I've supposedly had like some of the best coffee in the world. People have these super expensive machines, and I don't like it, but I like what it does for me. And so now I'm kind of like, stuck with like, well, what are these alternatives? Like these, like, Monster or Rockstar or these kind of, energy drinks that are like for me, way overly caffeinated, like way too much. And there's a ton of like fake sweeteners and stuff in there.
Yeah.
And it's just not. I don't know. It's
like jet fuel.
Well, yeah, but yeah, like in a bad way, I feel like. Yeah, exactly. And it kind of tastes like it too, to be honest. It kind of tastes like jet fuel. So I was like super curious to try these little 2-ounce drinks out. And one of the things that really I was like, okay, I'm super curious about this, is that I feel like it's like perfectly caffeinated. So again, it's like I like some caffeine, but I cannot tolerate too much. So if I'm like kind of under caffeinated when I wake up and I'm trying to sit down to write, it's just a non-starter for me. But if I have too much caffeine, it's almost like it's like I can't sit down. I can't focus. And I feel anxious, which is really an absolute non-starter for being creative for me. Yeah. I cannot create if I feel anxious. That's just no go. So they reach out to us, and I've been trying these little guys daily for a few days, and I have to say, like, I'm pretty impressed. For me, it's the perfect amount of caffeine. And here's the thing too. So instead of these other energy drinks where the caffeine kind of comes from, I think it's just like purely synthetic. It's like just pure caffeine they're adding to these drinks. So this caffeine actually comes from matcha tea. And I think what's cool about that is that it's actually kind of like, it's like a time release, I guess, so to speak, or like an extended release, like way to
hit you up front,
way to deliver caffeine. So not only is it like a really good amount, or I think kind of like a sweet spot amount of caffeine, but it actually has kind of a time release effect. So it's not hitting you all at once and kind of overwhelming you, and then it's gone in an hour. And so I was like really impressed. I feel like it's the right amount of energy. And it's got like a really nice kind of like profile of how long that lasts and kind of like how it hits and how you feel it. I just wanted to share that here with our viewers, our listeners. And I also wanted to share too that it's now available at your local Sprouts to try. So I highly recommend go check this out. And if you like it, we actually have a discount offer here for you. So if you go to magicmind.com/soldiers of cinema, so again, that's magicmind.com/soldiers of cinema, and you use the code cinema20, you'll get a 20% discount for one-time purchases and up to 50% off if you apply it to a subscription. So I highly recommend that you guys check this out. I have really been enjoying it.
Your reaction has kind of made me want to try them, because I find that like I don't mind the taste of coffee, and I will drink espresso sometimes or drink tea.
I don't like espresso either. It's so weird.
Yeah, well, espressos, if you don't like coffee, that's understandable. Yeah, but what my issue is kind of interestingly sort of like the opposite of yours, where I actually find that the caffeine in those things doesn't ever really affect me that very much. Like I always find that, like, and I think maybe I just have an immunity to it or something like that. But because of the fact that there's also so many other things in this, I am curious to know. When I get a chance, I'd love to try one out. So
I mean, there are so there's not just matcha in this, which does contain that caffeine that you're going to get in that kind of extended time release that we talked about. But yeah, there's also ashwagandha, some lion's mane mushrooms, and some other things. So yeah, hopefully we can find a way to get some of those out there to you in Canada. We can talk to the Magic Mind people and see.
Yeah.
But if you're here in the United States, like I said, available at your local Sprouts. And also available online and for our listeners with a discount. So magicmind.com/soldiers of cinema, code cinema20. And we will also have that information in our episode notes. Okay, so on to Die Hard.
We thank you one and all and wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
It's Christmas Eve in L.A. But a team of terrorists.
You want money? What kind of terrorists are you? Who said we were terrorists?
have their own holiday plans.
And I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me. Okay. We do it the hard way.
But the one thing they didn't plan on was New York cop John McClane.
Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake. Who knew? You really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, mother...
And you'll have it.
They have already killed one hostage.
This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Come to Papa, honey. You really an American? Only if New Jersey counts.
What does he think he's doing?
Job.
They're using artillery on us.
You idiot. It's not the police. It's him.
He's an easy guy to like
Welcome to the party, pal.
and a hard man to kill. Bruce Willis, Die Hard.
All right.
Now
This
that
is
we're all
my
caffeinated
pick.
up.
And you're all, yeah. This is my pick, and I thought it would be fun to talk about this movie here at Christmas time. Now we've already talked about how that's a little bit of a controversial thing, but and we're going to get to that too. But mostly because it was on my radar because of Christmas. But what I'm really interested about is, this is one of the first action films that I remember. I was 12 when it was released. Now I didn't go see this at the theater. I remember seeing this on TV, cable, probably it would have been 2 years later or something. But I remember this, or maybe I saw it on VHS. I'm not sure which one. But I mean, it was huge, at least in my mind, right? In my 12-year-old mind, it was like, oh my gosh, Die Hard, this is the most amazing thing ever. And I was intrigued by what action was in 1988 and what action cinema is today, and kind of how maybe that's changed. Has it been for the better? Has it been for the worse? Maybe a little bit of both, but that was kind of the initial question or curiosity that I had. And I hadn't seen it in a while. So I'm curious, what, again, I always love kind of seeing films through your eyes, generation younger. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. But, for me, this film, and I think for many people of my generation, this film kind of represents the zenith of action cinema from that era. And we're going to, I think, talk about why. But so I'm curious, when you first saw this, how old you were, what your thoughts are when you saw it, and kind of what your thoughts are now.
I genuinely, I do not remember the first time I saw this. I think it's one of those movies that was always playing on Spike TV. And so I think or AMC or something. I would always just come in to or turn on the TV at some point during the day, and it would be partway through Die Hard, because I do have very distinct memories of seeing this as a probably too young. I was probably 7 or 8 the first time I actually saw pieces of it.
Okay.
And I remember my dad probably being like, "Oh no, this is too violent for you," despite the fact that he showed me.
Which my parents never said. Yeah, my parents never said that, by the way.
I think he still let me watch it anyway, because I saw a lot of stuff as a kid. But but I do specifically this is a movie that I have a distinct memory of being told that it was violent. So again, I can't quite remember the context of it, but I do remember.
So it was prefaced for you.
I don't know
it
why.
It had a reputation.
I remember there being the part when he runs across the broken glass. I distinctly remember there being a commercial break right after that.
Oh.
So that is very stuck in my brain. Now, my dad also is one of those people who staunchly thinks that this isn't a Christmas movie. So as a joke, one year I got it for him, the Blu-ray. It was a 4-pack actually of all 4 of the first ones.
I've got it. Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
for a Christmas, I got him that, and so
I love it.
It is kind of his classic thing. I haven't seen it, I don't think, in a few years. I think it's probably been maybe 5 or 6 years since I last watched it. But I've always liked it. It's always been a really exciting, action movie, and I think I'm just trying to think about I want to see if I can think about the first time I saw it, because I feel like, but again, it's like a mix and mash of different TV viewings, I think, that I saw. And I definitely know that like the first time I sat down and watched it all the way through was probably in early middle school. Like I was probably in grade 6 or 7 at that point. And yeah, I don't know. I think I remember like being very, as a young man, being very into the like visceral action and the blood and the lots of the violence, and it was very exciting and things like that. And so I can't give a very specific recollection of my first time, but I do know that this has been quite a consistent movie for me through my life. So
now your most recent viewing, what were your thoughts? And I mean, and you haven't really said like, do you like it? Did you not like? I mean, not explicitly, but it sounds.
No,
like
I definitely
Okay.
do like it. Yeah, it's definitely it's always been something that I have never not wanted to watch this when it's been put on and like that. I sound very specific. I sound like I'm like avoiding talking about how I like
I know.
it, but I'm not.
You're like, I mean,
I do
never
actually
not,
genuinely enjoy.
I've never not
like I'm like in a legal
disliked,
proceeding or something, and I have to.
I've never not disliked the liking of this film. It's like
but
you're
no,
a
I do
politician.
I do genuinely like I do enjoy the movie. And I think this time was interesting because I think I was like, again, it's probably been 6 or so years since I last saw it.
Yeah.
If I'm guessing correctly, I could have seen it more recently than that because it has been something that I've pretty consistently watched at Christmas as well. So I might just be misremembering. But yeah, I think that this time specifically, I was interested in like a lot of the, I don't know, it's like one of those times when you kind of rewatch a movie that you haven't seen in a few years and like all these technical elements kind of start popping out at you. Like for example, another Christmas movie that I always watch is Scrooged with Bill Murray.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And I remember like one time watching that, and like because I've watched that all the time as a kid. Like like that's like a Christmas Eve tradition where like with my mom we always watch it.
That's awesome.
And similarly to this, I remember watching it kind of after I had started making movies, and all of these really interesting technical aspects kind of started popping out at me there. And so I think I had sort of a similar experience with this, where for the first time, not maybe for the first time, but definitely was like, oh, that's a really interesting way to compose that shot or shoot this scene, or the actual like structure of the film and how it kind of tells the story, and how there's actually, I actually was surprised this time too, that it's not until halfway through the movie that the like big terrorism plot really kicks off. Or robbery, I suppose, is the.
So yeah. Well, I mean, but even to like to extend that a little, it's not until 20 minutes in that we have really any action at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think this is, we can kind of start here. I mean, this is one of the places that I think really distinguishes this film from so many action films today, for the most part, by and large. And this is going to kind of build into a theory. I have a theory that I want to share with everybody. I don't know if it's a theory, but it's what I call it. I've named a syndrome that I feel like modern action movies suffer from. And this is part of it. We're going to get to it, but I call it the Pepsi Challenge syndrome. And I'm going to explain this. But I don't. You may be too young. I don't know, but you probably heard of like the Pepsi Challenge, right?
Yeah.
You heard of it? Okay.
I think so.
So for everybody else out there, so way back in the day when I was a kid, right? Coke and Pepsi, like which sugar water do you want? It's big money. Yeah. And there was and Pepsi had this campaign where they did blind, supposedly. I think they probably really.
Oh yes,
did.
I have done this. I actually have done this. Yeah.
I'm not gonna say they didn't do it, but they did. Not supposedly. I don't know why I said supposedly. They did. Sure. Like give them the benefit of the doubt. This is honest. So they went out and they did blind taste tests. They put some Pepsi in a cup with no label. They put some Coke in a cup with no label, and they give it to people on the street or wherever the heck they are. Right.
I have. And that done was kind this.
And so people would just take a sip. So somebody would stand there off the street, sip of the one, sip of the two. Which one do you like best? And they'd be like, I like number one. Oh, it's Pepsi. Okay. So the point is, but this gets interesting though. So Pepsi would win on average on these taste tests. More people would say they preferred a sip of Pepsi to a sip of Coke. And so Pepsi went nuts with this ad campaign. More people choose Pepsi in blind taste test. More people choose. But Coke always outsold Pepsi and kept outselling Pepsi. People would go into a store, they'd buy Coke, not Pepsi.
And there's the old
Why?
classic complaint about when a restaurant says, "Is Pepsi okay?" And you're like, "No,
Yeah,
absolutely
no,
not."
I
Like,
won't
that's
even
the-
eat. I won't even eat somewhere if they have Pepsi. But that I don't. Hey, Pepsi, if you want to sponsor us, I'll treat. No, just kidding. That's totally not true. But so here's the thing. In these taste tests, these blind taste tests, people keep saying we love Pepsi better. Pepsi's better. Pepsi's better. But people buy more Coke, buy more Coke, buy more Coke. Why? Well, what they found out, so they actually dug into this. So Pepsi is sweeter than Coke. Now they're both. I mean, I don't even know how you can tell one's sweeter than the other because all they are is sugar and carbonated water. But
Yeah.
apparently, Pepsi is sweeter than Coke. And when someone takes a little tiny sip of something that's sweeter, their kind of knee jerk is like, "Oh, that's better," but it's based on a sip. If you're going to drink a whole 12 ounces of something, there's like a threshold of how much sweet you can tolerate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when it comes to actually sitting down and pouring a whole glass of something and drinking it over a period of time, it's Coke. That's what people actually want. And so I feel like modern action films, looking at you, Marvel, kind of fall into this Pepsi challenge syndrome thing, where it's like too much just action all the time. And
Yeah.
even within the action, the biggest thing is actually not like, maybe it's not even that there's just action all the time, but it's that when there is action, it's freaking overwhelming.
Yeah.
There is like so much crap
It's like
happening
sensory overload. Yeah.
on screen all the time. It's like the whole we've talked about this. It's like the whole world is exploding and aliens from it's just like it's like everything has to be bigger, has to be bigger, has to be bigger, has to be bigger. And so I've labeled this. This is my own invention. I call this the Pepsi challenge syndrome. So at least, and you argue with me on this, tell me you don't buy it, whatever, like, it's open for debate. But I feel like this partially can explain why I think Die Hard has held up over time, even in like a head-on-head competition with a modern action film, is because they take time to set things up. They set up characters. We know who they are. There's these great. That's the other thing too. There's really McTiernan does a McTiernan. I always want to put an M.
Yeah.
in there.
John McTiernan. Yeah.
I don't know why I always want to put an M. I want to say
Yeah,
McTiernan, but it's not.
It is kind of an odd. Yeah.
It's
like
McTiernan.
McTiernan.
And he's kind of the king of '80s action. But I feel
And even
like,
made fun of that in Last Action Hero, of course.
and even made fun of that in where he did kind of get a little bit of his own Pepsi challenge syndrome going on, might I add, and it was not successful. But the taking the time in that first act to develop characters and to have so many little setups. There's so many little setups that pay off in this film. And even within the film, there's action and there's like relief. There's comic relief. There's, dramatic relief from the action. There's a dynamic range that actually exists in this film. And I know a lot of modern action films try to kind of replicate this dynamic range as well, but I just feel like there's not nearly enough dynamic range in action films today. So
I completely agree. I think it's interesting that you brought that up because I think that even within, like, I think we've spoken about this at length, but I'm not a big superhero fan. Period. Like, I've never really been super into it, but growing up and still to this day, I actually really enjoyed the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. I always thought that those were kind of, and it's funny because a lot of the times what people talk about with those and why I think the second one, Spider-Man 2, is kind of still like talked about as the greatest superhero movie of all time, is because there's like a good 45 to 50 minute chunk in that movie where there's no act, like Peter Parker is not Spider-Man. He loses his powers and he just goes about day-to-day stuff and like his life is falling apart and it's all character stuff.
We've talked about
it's
this.
exactly the same thing here where you get, like, there are great action set pieces in this.
Yes.
But they are
for
all in service of
They're
John
motivated.
McClane getting to a point, having to do something, completing a task. Of course, the setup of the movie is this guy has no shoes. He's got nothing except for his pistol, like his service pistol, and he's running through the building. And it's like he has to essentially figure out, how am I going to take down?
Let's go back further than that. there's this great there's like it's a masterclass in economical story setup.
Oh yes,
right?
yeah.
Like we start like right off the bat, we know he doesn't like flying. He's like nervous about flying. We know he's a cop, and I know easy, but this is all done like very economically, often visually. Exposition is told in a way that it doesn't feel a lot like exposition. You know, he sits in the front of the taxi.
Marriage issues too, yeah.
Right? We set up that he's still married to, but estranged to his wife. She's moved out here to pursue a career. He's left in New York because he's dedicated to his job, right? And maybe we have a little bit of, you know, maybe he's an older style dude and maybe he's threatened by his wife's success, which is kind of implied a little bit, but, you know, so there's some depth there even. And I think this started to happen to a lot of men in the 80s. So there's some depth, but we set up this like relationship with the taxi driver, the limo driver, and he has his moment. He's some comic relief through the film, but he also has a dramatic, heroic moment that pays off in the end. You know, we set up all of this. We set up that he's far from perfectly capable. He's frustrated with himself. He is, you know, estranged from his wife. He's failed her.
Well, even just in the politics of the time too, right? Like he's a New York cop, like grizzled New York street cop in
sarcastic,
the perfect, like, you know, pearly white
it's
LA,
beautiful.
right?
Well, and even in this building, right? He's in Nakatomi Plaza, and he's in this like beautiful, like foil wallpapered, you know, suite, right? I mean, it's an office building, and it looks like a fancy hotel room, you know.
Yeah, and they got the waterfall feature and all that, yeah.
Right, but I mean, you know, and here he is like a wife beater, like you say, and there's this fun setup, you know. It's like the guy in the plane at the beginning is like during the credit sequence is like, you know, when you get to where you're going, take off your shoes and, you know, make fist with your feet on the carpet. And you're thinking at the time, and I love these kind of setups. And the thing is, they're not hard to do. They're so not hard to do, but so many films don't take the time to do this, and I don't know why. But, you know, and you're thinking at the time, well, that's a weird line of dialogue. Like, this seems kind of out of left field. Like, this is weird. Who the hell would say this on a plane? And then, you know, you get to the, you know, he's actually at his wife's place of work at Nakatomi Plaza. He's there kind of getting freshened up for the party. He's got his shoes off in the bathroom. He's sitting on the pot. He's, like, making fist with his feet. He's like, oh, God, that actually works. Holy crap, that really works. And then, of course, it plays out, it pays off even further when we get to the shoot out the glass, which is like one of the standout sequences in the film that everybody loves. It sticks in everybody's mind. I mean, hey, whoever edited that commercial break did a perfect job because they knew like you were going to be right there to watch that commercial. Yeah. You know, but I just love all these little setups. The watch, we're going to get to it, but you know how. You know, she doesn't want to talk about the Rolex that she got, you know, with her husband when they first kind of meet and introducing her boss to him and everything. And of course, the watch is what ends up, you know, sending Gruber to his death at the end of the film. So I don't know. I love these setups. I love the time that the film takes before it gets into action mode. And I love the dynamic range that the film has. Every character has a payoff, which I think is really nice. And, you know, we've got, this is horrible. I'm going to forget the character's name, but, you know, his it's almost like a buddy cop movie too, which
he's like a little liaison below.
People actually like, and I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but this is actually a buddy cop movie. It just so happens that one cop is on the scene, stuck in the building, and the other cop is outside on the radio helping remotely. Moral support, you know, and of course in the end saves his life, which is what people don't focus on that so much, which I'm kind of surprised by. But like I feel like that's so beautiful. Okay, anyway, I'm going on and on. So these are some of the things. Now you talked about, Colin, and I want to hear a little bit more about this. We were briefly talking about this before. You were talking about how you felt like this film kind of lacked like a cynicism that you feel like is in modern action films.
Well, that's the other thing too. Is like I've always found that a lot of modern like studio action films have this bizarre, and I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it's like, I think that one thing is that movie stars are basically brands at this point. Like, they're not movie stars. And so it's like, you're not going to see a Dwayne Johnson movie where he's playing a character. You're going to see a movie where Dwayne Johnson is in a situation, or Ryan Reynolds, or whoever it is.
They're brands.
Exactly,
that's what you're
exactly.
saying.
And
Yeah.
so
they're not people.
because of that, and it's not limited to those two. Those are just two examples that I think have been talked about recently. But because of that, what you end up with is, if this was made today with the exact same script, you'd have, like, let's say Ryan Reynolds, as a brought up example, was playing John McClane, and he's running through and he's got his glass. He'd be like, "Oh, that's great! I've got glass in my feet now." Like, there's this kind of like bizarre irony to it all, where it's like they have
Wait.
to.
Can I just stop you for a second? This is my favorite moment, and I just thank you for that. I just love that. That was.
But
brilliant.
no, it's really it frustrates me, because I find that it's almost like the creators, like the writers and the directors and the cast of these movies, are like worried to be sincere.
Yes,
and they're worried to take things
yes.
seriously, because it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know if it's like they think that their high school bullies are gonna like message them and be like,
Well,
"You
there
are
is-
sincere, haha." And so
there's a detachment. You're so right. There's a detachment, and I think you're right. It's so much more than just, okay, the modern action films kind of, they don't take time, and of course some do. We're speaking in generalities. I mean, there's always a lot of exceptions. So I don't. But we kind of or that the action is so big, but it was without an emotional attachment. I think this is what you just mentioned it really speaks to that. It's that there's this. It's like wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah,
I'm
like
in a movie.
acknowledging the audience almost. Like, it's
I'm
almost
in a
like they-
movie.
Yeah.
This is a movie. So it's like, and I feel like this all speaks to this like postmodernism, or almost like meta modernism. This, like, we all know it's a movie. We all know I'm an actor. We all know that when I grab the, beer out of the fridge, it's an advertisement, and so I'm gonna even
Probably
wink
for
at
the actor's own beer brand.
for their actor's own alcohol brand. And so everything is kind of this wink, wink, nudge, nudge, inside joke, tongue in cheek. You're right. And so where does that leave us? As an audience, where that leaves us is zero emotional attachment. That's where that leaves us. Because the characters we're supposed to be relating and empathizing to are literally breaking the fourth wall over and over again to remind us they don't care. So why should we?
And it's also, I think it's really, you have to be very specific with it too.
Yeah.
Because there are certainly funny little lines that John McClane says in
Yeah,
this, but
and
they're
it's
all in character, and that's the difference, right?
Yeah,
They're
and it's
all
not
in
like he's
character,
not
and it's-
sarcastic.
Yeah, and it's like a tension release. It's
Yes.
not a
Yes.
it's not a like, it's not like him being like, like, "Oh, like, what is this situation I've gotten myself into this time?"
Well, it's not
more
him
like
saying this doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's him
exactly.
saying, like, holy crap, that was a close call. Kind of.
And my character would to alleviate the tension I feel right now,
Yeah.
crack a joke or swear at
Yep.
the guy on the ground, like the
Totally.
FBI guys or whatever, right? And so I think that's another thing that
It's a great
whenever
point.
this is brought up, people will go like, well, there's always been comic relief in movies, but it's the meta fourth wall breaking.
Yeah. Great
and
point,
I think
Colin.
one of the
Yeah.
reasons I do bring up Ryan Reynolds specifically too is because he was in a Michael Bay movie not too long ago. I think it was called Six
No.
Underground, and it totally not that Michael Bay is like a groundbreakingly brilliant filmmaker or anything like that, but I think one thing that always has worked in Michael Bay's favor is that all of his characters take the movies that they're in seriously, right? Like
Right.
that there is still, love the movies or hate the movies. The characters are still in there taking it seriously and responding.
I mean, to the point of
crazy
melodrama
action.
for his older films,
absolutely,
at least.
absolutely. But the one with Ryan Reynolds is funny because you have all these crazy Michael Bay action set pieces, explosions, car crashes, and things like that, and it'll like cut to him in the car, like almost looking at the camera, being like,
Yeah.
"Wow, like how did I?" Like it almost feels
Yeah.
like you have to have like a record scratch and be like,
I didn't
bet you're wondering
audition-
how I got here."
I didn't audition for this film. How did I get cast? Yeah.
And so I think that, and again, not to just crib on Ryan Reynolds, but I think that he's a really good example of that,
No,
just because you see the difference where it's like there are some funny bits in Die Hard. Absolutely, there's some
For sure.
They are
There's
funny.
great comedy. Yeah.
And yet they all feel like they naturally fit into the setting of the film and
Yeah.
the tone of the film
And
completely.
and even, let's be honest, I mean, it's even like to the point of slapstick.
Oh yeah,
Like a lot of time. I mean, it's not that even the comedy is subtle or that it's like, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, like ho ho ho, I've got a machine gun, or I mean, but it's all it all goes with the emotional flow as opposed to denies the emotional flow of the situation.
And you know what too is that you never, again, like I'll reiterate this but slightly differently too, like because you brought up the ho 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 thing. To me, what that says about John McClane is that he's kind of scared shitless, and he's like, okay, well, I gotta just like to relieve my own stress. I'm gonna make a joke about this, and it's not.
We
and
all
it's
do
not
this.
like he's just like completely calm about it and being like, I'm gonna tease them for fun.
Yeah.
Like it's like he's like, how do I scare the hell out of these guys and make them think that I'm a much bigger threat than I actually appear to be because I'm one guy with no shoes on.
Totally.
And so it really, and it tells you a lot about him as a character too, that like it's not him looking at the bright side. It's him just scraping together anything that he can out of desperation.
Yeah.
And so I find that is a really, really key difference between, these things.
Yeah, it's like when you're staring into the abyss, right? The existential, like the end that we will all face. I mean, you're left with only one option, really, which is to laugh. It's like, what else can you do?
And so I do think that, like, and I think that Willis plays that perfectly. I think that, like, even it's not. And do you know what else? Another perfect example of that is like Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber. You don't get this point where like.
We got to talk
Bruce
about
Willis says a stupid line to him or something, or like says a one-liner to him over the radio, and then Hans Gruber looks at everyone else and sort of goes like, did he really just say that to me? And it's like this kind of character breaking, like, oh, I'm acknowledging how stupid that is. He just, every time Bruce Willis or John McClane tries something in this movie, tries to like get under his skin. Alan Rickman, or I keep saying their actors' names, Hans Gruber is pissed, but he's pissed in a like scary way that makes him a very formidable villain in this.
I mean, can we just talk about that point for a second? Because I think, we talk about Bruce and, we talk about comedy and, obviously it's, Bruce's history up to this point. I think he was mostly known for moonlighting. I think would be how most people would have known him, television actor. And it was tough to go from television to film back then. Now, of course, people are doing the reverse of that because, well, it's a whole different story. But, and so this is in '88, so we have Schwarzenegger, Stallone. This is like the height of big muscle-bound dudes as heroes. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the other thing I just want to briefly touch on is that Bruce coming from a comedic perspective, and a little bit more of an everyman as opposed to a Superman, I think was key. But yeah, let's get to Alan Rickman because I think this is his first major feature film performance and
launched him into stardom.
I mean, boy, does he crush it, right? I think he went from like theater, he was performing a play to this, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to speak out of school, but I think he was about 40 when he landed this role, and I mean, boy, does he crush it. I mean, I feel like, in any good film, right? It's the better the bad guy, the better the film, right? The better the hero. And Hans Gruber is just, it makes this film, in my opinion. I mean, I used to joke to my wife that if we ever had a son, like we had to name him Hans Gruber. I don't know what it is about that name.
Yeah. It's so great. It's like
such a
it's like
great
if you put
name.
if you just asked like an AI generator for like a German name
For a
out
bad
comes
guy.
Hans Gruber.
Hans Gruber. It's just it's like
Could
the
be like
perfect
Werner Herzog's cousin or something.
I mean, a rose by any other name, right? Yeah, it's just brilliant. But I mean, it's Alan Rickman's performance, right? That I think that imbues that. It's like shorthand. I'm saying, holy crap! What an amazing performance! What an amazing antagonist! What a just all around wonderful.
And one of the things that I think is actually really a brilliant change, because of course this is based off of a book.
Yes,
is that they change the motivation from pure terrorism, which is in the book, to robbery. And I think that the reason they did that was to lighten the film.
For sure.
But I think it actually really works out in its favor because what it does is it makes these like it makes the villainous thieves so much more distasteful, because you're kind of thinking like, oh, you're not even doing this for like anything other than, and that's kind of what
it's kind of what they
John
say
McClane's,
multiple times.
wife says, she's like, you're not even like terrorists, you're just
Yep.
doing, like, you're just no good criminals,
Yeah.
or no good thieves, and so you get this, like, I think that actually, even if the only real motivation to do that was to kind of make it a little bit less heavy, the subject matter, that it actually does work in the favor of the film in itself, because it does kind of make this whole character of Hans Gruber also so much more intriguing. Like when he does the whole thing about, I want to release the like Front de Liberation Quebec, and all these terrorists like around the world who are imprisoned, and you just kind of get, again, like the movie itself isn't cynical, but the character is, like, he's so cynically just being like, I'm gonna spin all this stuff and just waste their time so that we can just get away with this money and go sit on a beach somewhere. And so it's like one of these rare cases where I think that the simplification of the stakes and the simplification of a character's motivation and the villain's motivation here actually works in the favor of the film, just because of how it's handled. It's actually just done so well that it really works out in the favor of the film. That makes it.
You're making me think about, that's interesting. You think about how the film itself is not cynical, but yet we have some like very interestingly cynical characters, and look what happens to them. One could potentially even make an argument that this is like an anti-cynical film, that the film is actually very specifically commenting against cynicism, right? I mean, you just talked about how Hans Gruber is, frankly, an epitome of cynicism. But look at, like, I mean, then you've got William Atherton, who plays that TV reporter. I mean, have you ever seen a more cynical, like, slimy character? In a film?
He reminds me so much of. Well, is that not him in Ghostbusters too?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yep, I think you're right. And I mean, he's so good at that, just that kind of like, character.
God, yeah.
I mean, it's not even that I have a word for it. It's like a sound. It's like a visceral, like, you know. And
we've all met someone like him.
And it's so great in this role. But I mean, and I just love that he gets his in the end. So we've got that great setup. But I mean, you could almost argue that this film is actually like anti-cynical, right? It's like, so that's a really interesting point. But yeah, I mean, I think all the way around. I mean, each one of the crew, each one of Gruber's crew, I think this is the other thing that really works well in this film, is that each character, that not every single person in the crew, but there's like a handful that have an important role to play in the story. They really stand out. They have unique personalities, they have unique looks, they have a unique role, and they're not just like cannon fodder, which I think is really important and works really well in the film. Because a lot of films back then, I mean, that's kind of, it's just like generic bad guy number 3, it's just...
Oh, yeah, like, they all have names, they all have, like, different reactions to...
And roles, Yep. And it's just, so, I mean, there's so many things, I think, that make the film stand out. But I want to touch on it. I know this is, like, really your area of expertise, too, and we haven't touched on it yet, is Jean de Bont's cinematography.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I actually find really interesting about this, because there is, I think, as you get into the 80s, not that there was, certainly movies are still very stylized at this point, and to a degree they always have been, but you actually, what I find interesting about this era of like filmmaking is that you get a little bit more standardized with the looks of large budget like studio movies. And I think a lot of the reason to that is because, you had the 70s new wave and all that.
Right.
And
we were out of the new Hollywood era.
By the 80s, you have the studios kind of regaining that control from the crazy directors.
Those wacky directors spending all of our money. Yeah.
So the movie, actually, I think that the movie looks great. Like, I think that John de Bont does a fantastic job. It's anamorphic. There's a lot of, like, I think that one of my favorite things about the flares in this movie, and actually of this era, is that so often today you get this kind of, like, J.J. Abrams is kind of the biggest name in this idea, but you're like specifically shooting light into the lens to flare it, and you're flaring it, whereas the flares here actually seem a lot more incidental, which I like. is that it's just like, oh, there's a light there, and the lens brushes past it quickly, and so you
I mean,
just
let's
get like
be
a little
honest.
bit of
Let's be honest.
I'm
it's
sure
on
those-
purpose.
yeah,
But
it just
it looks
it's
good.
hidden a lot more well. It's like it's
Well, and they're dirty, and I think that's
Yeah,
the big, like
exactly.
These are they're using old lenses, and I'm not sure quite what, but I do remember.
I would
hearing,
guess C series would be my guess, like Panavision C series lenses. if I could
I'm
make
not.
a
I'm
gander.
pretty sure they're Panavision. They're definitely an older series of lens, and so they're like you get some dirty flare. I mean, I don't know if how other like actual cinematographers would call it, but they just seem. You know, you mentioned J.J. Abrams, and I mean, it almost seems like his are like digitally inserted, and actually,
Well, he actually shines a light. He has a
Ugh.
flashlight, and he shines
Yeah.
it into.
yeah, and so I get what you're saying. Yeah,
Panavision Ultra Speed Golden lenses.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, no, that's for the high speed shots. Let me just. Well, I can actually get this up real quick.
yeah. So
They are. Yep, C series,
Okay.
and E series lenses.
okay, okay. So, and I think those are older. I mean, even
Yeah.
in the '80s when
Those
this
were,
was
I
shot.
think, like late '60s when those
Yeah.
were made.
Yeah, and so you're right. I think it does, and it gives it not just those what I think the average kind of person might think of those anamorphic flares, which are like those blue shootouts,
Like purely horizontal.
Those horizontal.
Yeah.
This has like really beautiful haloing and circular artifacting, and which I think is pleasing. I feel like the artifacting of these lenses, this flaring, has a more just aesthetically appealing. Now we're getting like super nerdy, but just it does have a more aesthetically pleasing look, in my opinion, than those really forced,
Like a lot
really
of modern anamorphics.
yeah. It's
No, I do think it's interesting that there's a little bit more of a standardization to style.
one thing I want to
in-
talk about. I want to talk about this. So I want to talk about this because if there's anybody, you're too young, but if there's anybody else that remembers this, if you're listening to this, okay, I have this memory. So I feel like when I was a kid, and this is probably like 1990 or something, right? And the Die Hard is on TV. Now, obviously, TV back then we're talking about 480 4x3 CRT, right?
Yeah,
This is
that
what
was
we're
the same
looking
how
at.
I watched it too. Yeah.
But I feel like when I would watch that on television, or it was VHS, and this is where I need help. I can't remember that obviously it's going to be pan and scan. We get that. It's for sure it's pan and scan. But I feel like there was some kind of error, like because it was shot anamorphic, it wasn't like de-squeezed correctly. And I remember watching it when I was a kid multiple times, where I kept wondering, why the hell does everybody look so strangely stretched?
Yeah, well, that's actually so. A lot of times there was actually kind of a choice that people would make sometimes between
You
pan
got
and
the
scan
answer.
and
Okay.
and just almost like de-squeezing a 235 image into 185 and then cropping that, and so you wouldn't have the full like two times.
But I
de-squeeze.
only remember with this film.
Yeah,
Now, obviously, like what you're saying, but and so I
and
was
it
wondering
was
if,
quite commonly done for TV though, like not necessarily VHS releases. But,
Yeah.
not I wouldn't say common. Like it was actually pan and scan was much more common. But
yeah, pan and scan was everywhere.
I do
you had
know. I've seen other movies that do that, and I do somewhat remember. I definitely saw this. Like it was the same thing where it was 4x3. I mean, this would probably been in the early 2000s. So 4x3 CRT, and like again like Spike TV or AMC or something. But
Yeah.
I think that it was likely. It's hard to say because there are also like VHS tapes could do widescreen. Like you could have a widescreen.
Yeah, you could have widescreen
right?
on VHS,
Yeah,
although it was rare until the end of the lifespan of VHS.
Yes, and 4x3 TVs, of course, too.
But I mean, when I grew up, I mean, everything that was shot at any wider aspect ratio. So basically, almost every film. Well, obviously there are many 4x3 or close to it films from earlier eras. That was, the original aspect ratio that was most common. But it was very common to do a pan and scan. But you would still have a relatively the image would not seem very distorted or distorted at all. You would just lose image data from the sides, right? And that hence the name pan and scan. You would have to they would literally have to move back and forth and create totally artificial camera moves that looked horrible because they weren't actually camera moves. It was the scanning system was like moving back and forth along the frame when they scanned it.
just cropping in essentially. Yeah.
Cropping in. And but this was like, this was the first time that I was like, why does everything look so weird? So it was almost like maybe it was one of my first exposures to like, well, wait a minute, like what is aspect ratio? Like what's going on here? What does anamorphic mean? So it was kind of my first exposure to some of that a little bit, where I noticed it, as a kid. But I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. But so we're talking.
No,
about...
I just do think that it's interesting that you get this kind of, again, like this a little bit more like cinematography in the 80s. There were obviously exceptions, but tended to be a little bit less experimental. Like it kind of found a niche again because studios started getting a lot more control. And this was also a lot of especially the late 80s and into the 90s was when you started to get larger non-film related corporations kind of owning studios and things like that, and the heads of these studios kind of stopped being actual film producers or things like that. Of course there have been more recent examples of film producers running studios, but it was kind of the first time that you really started to see like a head of an electronics company come in and start running a studio or something like that, right? And so I do find it interesting that you get, again, like you get this kind of a little bit more of a I mean, if you think about this and you think about something, again, for example, Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, what's another, late act, like even something like Last Crusade, for example. All of those movies look very different, but there's a lot more of a consistency in kind of the stylistic approach to lighting and like especially color timing was a lot more consistent at that point, where like the film stocks were very, very specifically timed to get a specific color, whereas there was a lot more experimentation with like contrast and color and different filtration and stuff like that in the late 60s or like up until pretty much the late 70s. So I do find it interesting. And it's not saying that this movie doesn't look good at all, because I think it does. I actually like the look of a lot of movies in the 80s. But it is sort of I just find it kind of like a little bit of an interesting historical tidbit, is that like you can kind of see the evolution of the film industry in the look of these movies alone.
Well, and I think some of that is technical, just in the, maybe it has to do, some with studios kind of taking more control away from directors. But I think also, too, is that you just have, over time, right? It's like when a technology is a little bit newer, there are, there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of different processes that are competing. There's a lot of different technologies that are competing. And so there's a lot of options, and people are playing around with a lot of things. But then over time, right, those technologies are kind of refined, combined. Technologies that weren't as successful, or especially economically successful, kind of fall away. So the options become less, right?
Things sort of fall in place.
And things kind of fall in place, and so film stocks get refined, color processing gets refined, but there's just only so many cameras, only so many lenses, only so many film stocks, And over time, things do kind of tend to technologies as they mature, push towards less options. And so I think a lot of it has to do with that. But I would also say, I think, by the time you get to the late 80s, especially here, and into the 90s, you've got this really wonderful sweet spot where you've got all of those technologies starting to become very mature, and film stocks becoming very refined, and cameras and lenses. And I think you start to get this like beautiful epitome of what film can look like. And then of course, we move a little bit further and we start to have digital take over. And, but yeah, I mean, I really am often quite pleased with like the look of this era of film. I feel like this moving through the 90s is like a really sweet spot, just from an image quality perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
On what film can look like.
And it's also like you have this point where sound technology is also really, really like really, really well refined. And so you get that really rich sound. Like you kind of don't have that like low pass sort of effect anymore, where like the bass just wasn't very punchy. Like you get like really, really wonderful Foley, and like the gunshots all sound very, very stark and poppy and things like that. And so I mean, speaking of sound, let's talk a little bit about the music.
And particularly, I think I discussed with you briefly, but it's so, again, I saw this when I was very young, so don't make fun of me for not knowing what Beethoven's Ninth was or the Ode to Joy. But I remember listening to this when I was a kid, and I just totally thought like, oh, this is Christmas music. Ode to Joy is Christmas music. I just thought like
Oh, me too, for sure. Yeah,
because I just totally, I was like, oh yeah, this is
even
Christmas
like
music.
knowing now that it's not, hearing that in this movie, because it's kind of
Still-
also mixed in with a few other like
Yep,
Christmas
yep,
motifs
totally.
and things like
Yep,
that.
Yep, for sure.
That I still to this day am just like, while watching this, I'm like, yeah, that's a Christmas. Like I don't even. It just kind of subconsciously passes into my brain as a Christmas movie, which is funny.
I know. And so obviously the music is a big part of why a certain contingency of people think this is a Christmas music is of course because of the our Christmas film is because of the Christmas music. But I want to hear but let's talk. I mean a little bit more. I mean the composer of this film was
Michael Kamen. Yeah.
Michael Kamen, and I think more than
He did
just
so many action movies in the
did
80s.
he did so many.
A James Bond movie. He did License to Kill.
Highlander, I think, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, he did Highlander. He did Robin Hood. He did, I think, the four,
Roadhouse.
Like, I think he did all three of the original Die Hards, and then did even the 2007.
No, this guy
one.
was pumping them out, man. I mean, he
he
was
did
doing like
Brazil,
3-4 films a
Lethal
year.
Weapon.
Yeah.
Like he just did so many. Last Action Hero. So clearly he worked with John McTiernan quite a bit. He did
Yeah.
Event Horizon. Like I could go on and on and on. But really, I think for someone that isn't like an immediate, like everyone can name like John Williams or Hans Zimmer or Ennio Morricone and things like that. Whereas for someone who's not quite like a household
Another
name as
Hans.
those ones, there you go. You get someone like Michael Kamen, who again may not be
Household name.
much of in the vernacular of modern culture, but he I think did a massive amount of like so many 80s act and really defined that sound actually in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think inspired a lot of present day like composers and the way music is used, because you hear, even again to go off on a tangent for a second, you hear his music for James Bond, and he took over right after John Barry's last film, who had been the James Bond composer for since the inception of the franchise, ended with Living Daylights, which was Timothy Dalton's first film, and then Michael Kamen comes in and does License to Kill, and it is a completely new sound, like totally.
Yeah.
And I actually really like the sound of his, like he kind of incorporates synthesizers and he incorporates sort of an electronic sound to a lot of things, but at the same time there's still like this orchestral feeling. He uses guitar a lot, like acoustic guitar, which I find interesting.
Yeah.
Like just as kind of almost like a little like letterhead for or a little like moment. I can't remember what the word is specifically, like a cue, just a tiny little bit to like emphasize something.
Yep.
So no, I do really like his score for this. Very distinct sound, and
I mean, and I just want to point out, too, I mean, and so just a couple other things. I mean, so yes, he's done a ton of action films, but a couple I just want to bring up too that really stood out to me and his work in them. And one is 1994's Don Juan DeMarco, which a lot of people crap on, and I guess I can get it, but I actually think it's a sweet film. And it's got some really extraordinary acting talent in it. Brando's in that, Faye Dunaway, and Johnny Depp, a younger Johnny Depp, and obviously 1994. I mean, how could he be older? But I think the score in that film is actually really quite nice, and I would recommend, just this is total aside, but if you've not seen that film, I do recommend it. And Mr. Holland's Opus was a little, that's from 95. That one was a little saccharine for me. That's just a little bit cheesy. But also What Dreams May Come. He actually did a few films with Robin Williams starring, but I think What Dreams May Come is really interesting. And then 2001's Band of Brothers, the miniseries, has really got some beautiful music in that, and that's really an extraordinary miniseries I would recommend as well. So, I mean, it's not just action films that he's scored. He's done some dramatic work and even some comedic stuff. And I agree. I think it's a shame that he's not as well known. He's done some really wonderful work. So, okay, let's wrap this up with the final question. Is it a Christmas film?
I think it counts. I think it's about a man on Christmas Eve trying to get back together with his family. So,
boom.
I would
you
say.
know what, Cullen? I couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I totally am in agreement with you. All right. Well, on that note, everyone, Appreciate you all hanging in there for a little bit of an extra long episode and a little bit of a divergence from kind of what we normally talk about. But I hope that you found kind of just our exploration of our own creative process interesting, I hope. Because really and truly, at the end of the day, that's what I think it's all about. And it's a big part of why we discuss these films, is to like better understand our own, like the creative process in general. And just like, it's such a huge part of the human condition. And it's like, it's such a huge part of the purpose of why we're here, I think. So it's kind of why we discuss these films. And so I hope that you found that helpful or interesting, or, you know, at the very least, not too terribly boring.
Yes, that's the goal. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, until next time. If you don't hear from us before, I'll just go ahead and cover the bases and say happy holidays to everyone. But hopefully you will hear from us before then. But just in case, happy holidays, everyone. We'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye-bye.